Rob Thompson Sports Biz Podcast. You know, even though we had to put this thing together, we had to ghetto rig it a little bit. We got Matt Noonan. Matt, nice to meet you. Thank you so much for being on. And although we can't, I got to use my cell phone to do this, but that's all right.
That's the nature of that's the beauty of this industry, man. We got to figure things out sometimes. But real privilege to be on with you. I'm excited to talk sports media, business, everything with you.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I started this podcast about 5 years ago. I started it as a business development tool to get in touch with executives in the industry that in other words, wouldn't have opportunities to do so. I couldn't get back past the gatekeeper. So it was the Sports Biz Podcast. It was an interview with influencers. So you're in that group now, buddy.
Well, I appreciate that.
And
I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's really, I was always been intrigued by people's stories and how they got involved in the industry, because I know we all have different paths. And once you get in, it's one thing to have a job, as an intern or selling season tickets at a minor league baseball team, but it's another thing to carve out a career or even start a business within it and be able to survive and live to tell about it. So, I'd love to. So with that introduction, no pressure, with that introduction, just tell us about your story. Tell us how you got involved in the industry and where'd you follow, after you discovered your passion. So that's it how's that intro?
That's a great intro.
Yeah.
So I guess in my end, Rob, it really goes back to, it's a nerdy story. I feel like, Kevin Burkhardt has always been someone that I've enjoyed because he's a Division III guy. I'm a Wheaton guy out of Massachusetts. And, so, when you find out other guys that went to like Division II or Division III and obviously have made something. I know you're a UNH guy. That's New Haven. My fiance is the New Hampshire one, even though she's from Connecticut.
Yeah.
But, from my end, it was when I was 8 years old and 11:59 on Sunday mornings. It was always making sure I was parked on the couch in my family room to watch the NFL on Fox. And again, it sounds so nerdy, but what really captivated me was not Ronnie Lott and JB and those guys. It was just the NFL on Fox introduction and the deep voiceover and thinking, man, this is just so cool. I'd love to do this one day. And that was kind of what really instilled my run into sports. And, when I was in high school, I did an internship with a local live TV station. When I was in college at Wheaton, Wheaton really prides itself. I'm a proud Wheaton alum, so if I dropped Wheaton a couple times.
It's all good. It's all good.
Exactly. I'm just like how you've got Charger pride with the New Haven. But, to make when I was in college, I was a liberal arts school. They really prided themselves on making sure that, really you do what you want to do. I did an internship with the Patriots, which was a great experience in the marketing department. Spent 2 summers with WEI, with a show that's no longer in the air anymore. But, also did some blogging one summer too with Rob Bradford, who's the main editor and sports Red Sox guy for WEI.com. And then when I was there, I started at the end of my time, noontimesports.com. Now, at the time, a lot of my buddies and I thought, hey, this was going to be our way into ESPN or our way into Fox or, the Globe or wherever it was going to be too. And it was just a little bit of a small outlet. We had a radio show. We tried to start our own sports magazine in a dorm room. Things were realizing, hey, if we do all this stuff, we might have to explain to mom and dad why we're missing classes and whatnot. But when I started it, I didn't imagine, this 10-year run because, earlier this spring, I celebrated 10 years on Noontime Sports. Now, when I started Noontime Sports, again, smaller avenue, writing about the Celtics, Bruins, Red Sox, Patriots, whatever, as I would say to anyone who wants to get into the industry, start a blog. It's a great way just to build some clips, get some experience, start obviously networking like we obviously did through LinkedIn. But, Noontime Sports, it really wasn't until I was a freelancer with Patch and with, working at Clear Channel, which is iHeartRadio, and also with ESPN Boston right out of college in 2010, 11, and 12, that I realized that, hey, covering sports for your own entity was something I wanted to do. And I always wanted to be in the college world. It just wasn't like, hey, and I still cover high school sports, and which is great because I take a lot of pride in that. But when I decided to start covering college sports, I wrote emails to BC and Harvard and the Hockey East and Northeastern, and those are my doors. That was my way into covering college sports. And then eventually being a Division III guy, I realized there really wasn't a niche for Division. There really was like a niche for Division III. Now, over the past couple of years, leading into it, you might say, Division III, you have your NESCACs, the Amherst and Williams around here. You've got, some good stories with, whether it's WPI, Springfield. One of my stops in my journey at MIT when I was an athletic communicator or sports information assistant. But, over the past couple of years, I've definitely realized the buy-in and from the players, the coaches, the parents, and the student athletes too. So, pumping out a top 20 poll on, New England Division III football, that's going to get a good amount of likes because people are going to say, why is my team, down here or they're not up there? And, today just pumped out our second year of working with Zelos Athletics. That's powering our Players of the Week and helping out with some other, promotional content too that we're doing. But to make a long story short, I've had the good fortune of being able to really touch a lot of different areas: broadcast and marketing, social media, content creation, to being in the sports information world, to being a reporter. And, obviously right now I'm a freelancer, so I'm going in multiple ways. I'm also a referee. So for those that want to know, hey, you can still take it to the next level. But, at the end of the day, I'd say, the field, as we both know, is changing. And, the $1 million question is, well, what's tomorrow going to be? And what's the day after that going to be? And that's where people like you and I and others that we network with, that's where we can kind of just collaborate and try to figure out how to, figure out where the future of sports and sports business and marketing are coming. And I definitely see it definitely affecting like the Division IIs and the Division IIIs. And I see it definitely impacting the high schools as well.
So talk about a little bit more, and you said something real early in your intro about content creating, and even if you're in college or if you're in high school, about writing blogs and start creating content that you're passionate about, that you're willing to put in the effort without getting paid for right away, right? And so how do you, 10 years ago, there's a lot of things that changed in 10 years in social media, right? So from then, if you had the tools then as you have now, I mean, Barstool's a perfect example of kind of organic growth. So what advice do you give somebody who's in high school that's passionate, that's that nerdy kid watching, Fox Sports on Sunday with the Globe sitting in front of them, dreaming about, I want to do that someday. Knowing what you know now, what advice would you give to yourself or an 18-year-old right now?
Well, I think the best advice, actually I had an SAT tutor one time that said to me, what's stopping you from doing what you want to do? I think that in this day and age, Gary Varnick's a good example too, because you listen to sometimes his podcast and you say, he's always just encouraging, saying, look, you're going to have to grind. You're going to have to get out there. The field has definitely changed. If I go back to my 21, 22-year-old self in 2009, 2010, I think initially I probably looked at thinking, well, I'm a freelancer with ESPN Boston. I'm producing a radio show on Boston airwaves, on, writing for, Patch.com, covering different, hyper-local high school sports. And I thought, hey, maybe that is, definitely the way of the future. But it's changed. A lot of, unfortunately, things have kind of gone by the wayside. And I think that what's really exciting, and I definitely enjoy it too, is that there's so many platforms out there: Twitter, Facebook, WordPress, which is what Noontime is, and a lot of websites have been written through, including like ESPN and WEI.com too as well. Is that there are definitely platforms that are out there for people, whether you're a young man or a young woman, whether you're 18 years old or whether you're 20 years old, or even if you're 35 years old. That you're saying to yourself, hey, I want to get into this. The best way to do it, honestly, is trying just to start building up the niche. Now, from the get-go, it's going to seem easy. I think for you and I, we can understand this. We're in the Northeast, both you and I. We're guys that know that the pro sports are going to, obviously that's what breathes life into a lot of this too. So here in Boston, you've got all those, this is a sports town where the Celtics, Bruins, Red Sox, and Patriots are always under a microscope. They're always being covered. So if you want to write about them, or want to do a podcast about them, or even just do a video series on YouTube, or do some stuff on Facebook or Twitter, or use Snapchat or Instagram as other channels as well, is I would say you've got to find an angle that's not being covered. I think that the general game stories are out the window. That's what social media is for. So when you're at a high school game or a college game, they can pull the box score. If you're a parent of a young man or woman, and maybe I'm covering or someone else is covering them, there's going to be stories there. There's going to be someone that's coming off a tough day in the classroom. There's someone who's, hasn't slept in a couple of days because they're trying to do a startup and they're doing an internship. And, I use the stories like, what I learned at MIT, which are a lot of those young men and women. And you can see that across the other, across the country. Maybe it's at a Tufts or, a Bentley, or even, with New Haven, where you are, there are stories that are not being told. And with a lot of, newspapers and websites scaling back on budgets, that's where the young men and women can jump in and find those stories there too. I was listening to a podcast the other day when I was coming back from a college football camp, and I think it was a couple of the guys at The Athletic, which again is another example of kind of maybe, hey, this is where sports feature is going, where people are paying for content. But one of the things that they were hitting on was how there were major outlets that were not sending the usual suspects or the usual candidate, the usual beat writers or people that were covering regions to those campuses. So if you want to get into something like this, there is nothing wrong with reaching out to an SID, reaching out to an athletic department, reaching out to an athletic director at the high school world, sending an email, sending a phone call, and saying, hey, look, I'm starting this up. I want to cover high school sports. I want to tell features. I want to tell feel-good stories right there. There's loads that you can find. And what it really is honestly is capitalizing right now on the fact that we are in a time where, there's so many outlets. It's just the field is oversaturated, I think, at the end of the day. So I think finding something that someone may not be going after is a great way to do it. And whether you want to do it through written word, whether you want to do a mix of video, audio, photography. I was at a game, and one of the things that I definitely would tell someone too, and I heard this too as an intern, was you've got to learn both sides of the camera. Learn how to be in front of the camera. Learn how to be behind it. Learn how to write the script. Learn how to be, and I mean, the biggest thing I would say to anyone, and I do obviously mentor a couple of young men and women that have come out of college, and I'm proud to be happy to help them out, is saying you got to have conversations. You got to talk with people. And you can't go ask for jobs. It's not. You just can't just say to someone, "Hey, I need a job." But you got to say to someone, "Hey, look, you created that piece of content that I like," or "Hey, you did a story this way. How could I, learn from that?" And I think that's kind of the thing that I would tell myself if I could jump back in time. But that's stuff that I definitely tell young men and women that are in college, or if parents reach out to me and say, my son and daughter is interested in getting into sports or sports media or sports business. Those are some things I definitely convey to them.
There's nothing more important right now, I think, in the industry, especially for job seekers and career seekers. You hit it on the head, is if you know how to create content, right? And maybe you don't. Some people are more natural at it as others. Like you said, writing, blogging, podcasting, video, YouTube channels. Find your area and your platform that you're comfortable with. I started off writing at first. I wasn't comfortable being behind a microphone or behind a camera. It took me years to do it. And then I finally said, screw it, I don't care. I was worried about people judging me, and then I was like, who cares? So I started doing that. And I tell the kids that our students that I mentor here, it's the same thing. Start creating content that you find that you're passionate about. And it could be cooking. It doesn't have to be about the Yankees.
Exactly. It doesn't have to be sports related. It could be anything you like.
It could be about, I spent a good part of my career at Disney. So I talk about that. There's so many niche industries, like cottage industries, that are built around people that are passionate about going Walt Disney World. Vacation blogs. People now, if you go to Walt Disney World now, especially around festivals like the Wine and Food Festival at Epcot, there's more people walking around with cameras stuck in their face that are vlogging, that are right, that are just.
I was at Disney last spring, so I can contest to that.
And Instagram models, and everybody has a camera. There's so many people There's an industry that has been created by the development of social media, And
Exactly.
right. So if you are a passionate Yankee fan and you want to invest $500 in the cheapest season ticket, and then you walk in and you're vlogging your opinion about the game and your experience about the game, you will slowly, gradually, beyond your nitwit friends being your followers, you will grow a bigger audience because, and if you're talented enough, and then you're going to be able to monetize it through Google Ads. It's what's happening right now, right? There's no silver bullet to it. And,
no, it is.
Right.
It is.
And I mean,
it is.
People are becoming millionaires off of it.
Yeah, and I think that like you hit the nail on the head. I mean, it doesn't have to be, hey, I want to write about the Patriots every day. I want to write about the Red Sox every single day too. You're absolutely right. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, we live in a world where, we've got phones right here, and you've got a recorder on it, and you got a video camera on it, and you got a still camera on it too. So you don't need to go out and buy a full studio. You can go out and buy one of those selfie sticks, which I don't know if you have one, Rob, but I haven't got one yet. But one of my followers saying, maybe go get a selfie stick if you want to do like the up close and personal. I get it, but I'm not really going to buy into that yet as a 31-year-old. But I will say that, that's exactly what it is. I mean, you have the power with this type of technology. 10, 15 years ago, no one would have thought that Twitter was going to become a great avenue to not only watch things, but also they're streaming live games, streaming live events. And that's the thing with also, Instagram stories are so essential too. You can do something where if you're at a game or if you're at an event and, exactly, get on that Instagram story and promote it to your followers. I mean, the biggest thing that I would say, and I think you kind of hit the nail on the head a second ago too, where you said, just maybe I was not the greatest, but, at least I did it. That's the biggest thing that I would say to anyone is that you've got to do something. If you've got a dream and a goal and objective, then you've got to do it, and that's the thing that, I'm flattered to have done because, I didn't know how to start a website. I didn't know how to blog. I didn't know how to do that. But I dove in and started doing that. And that's something that I'm proud of. But I think the biggest thing I would say to anyone is that you can always learn. And that's where, again, the networking thing comes back in too. Because if there's editors that are out there, there's producers that are out there. And if you want to learn how to write for camera, send them maybe a video or say, hey, you know what? I want to learn how to do this. And they might help you, or they might. But there are people that are out there that want to help you and encourage you to continue to take the next steps. But with the technology we have today, you have people these days have more at their disposal than say, well, I gotta go book a time at a local access TV station to do my show, or I've got to, figure out a way to go, to get money to buy these state-of-the-art cameras or whatnot too. No, you can do it on your phone. You can do it with a laptop is what you can do. And it may not be the best quality, but guess what? You're putting your stuff out there.
Or you can be like me. I leave the window cracked in the back so I'm able to sneak into the college radio station here.
Hey, that works too. That works too.
Yeah. They're like, is that who's that big man falling through windows in that place? So yeah, I mean, whatever. You never grow up, but I started off the same way, just recording on my phone, taking the file, uploading it into Anchor, and then finding Zoom. I started off with a software called NE Meeting, so it was just right, and it was awful,
right.
And it just always kind of, you never got good coverage. It stopped halfway through. And then I stopped using it because I had the president and the commissioner of John Butler of the Pop Warner Warner football. I got him on, and it took me like 2 months to schedule him. And he's an interesting man. I've known him for a long time. And we were just talking about where the Pop Warner was going with their championships down at Walt Disney World, the whole thing. And halfway through the podcast, it just went, it just stopped, So anyways, I'm just rambling right now, but that's, I guess the point is you have to find the software and you have to find the platform that works best for you. So.
No, it does. And I look, and I think the biggest thing too, Rob, that I think we can both agree on is you've got to find a niche. Yeah. You know what I mean? I mean, writing about, look, I'm not trying to harp too much on the Patriots here because I know, again, being a Patriots guy myself, was at the game last night. But the thing is, you
It's the
know,
law. It's the law for if you live 30 miles outside of Foxborough or not.
No, it is. It is. But I think that the biggest thing is that, my story is a little bit different than the typical, hey, and again, everyone takes different paths in life that I've definitely learned. I mean, some people are going to shoot up the ladder quicker than other people too. But the thing that I definitely would learn, and I've definitely tried to convey this to, to my network, my colleagues or friends, is that, I went after a beat that no one was covering. There's the occasional story of the feel good of the Division III kid or the Division II kid that's, doing this or that, or the high schools that might not be getting the attention where, you're down in the neck of the wood where I was down there earlier this spring. Darien and New Fairfield are lacrosse powerhouses down there. They don't just send kids to Division II and Division III. They're sending kids to Division I, and some of those young men are playing at the Major League Lacrosse or Premier Lacrosse League, which is still going on. Mm-hmm. And then you also have women that are, coaching in lacrosse or what that as well too. But, I think the biggest thing is that there are definitely avenues. I mean, the best way to start for anyone to build clips and get experiences is find like the closest high school to you and build that network with that athletics director. Build it with the coaches right there too. Tell them what you want to do because, honestly, 9 times out of 10, I mean, most athletic directors and coaches, if you come in and say, listen, you know what, I'm trying to gain some experience. I'm a college student. I'm a grad student. I'm switching fields, whatever or not. I have this experience, started this website. I want to come cover. If we want to use Darien for an example, I understand there's Game Time CT, and they're like the equivalent of ESPN Boston was to the state of the Nutmeg State. But I would say, those are great opportunities there. Independent baseball, as you alluded to, getting obviously the president of Pop Warner on and talking about the championships down in Walt Disney World too. Finding different type of niches and finding areas that are not covered. That's what's also going to separate yourself too. Everyone wants to write about the Patriots, the Red Sox, Bruins, and Celtics. But if you can say, well, you know what, I'm an analytical guy, because that's such a big thing too. Or in this day and age, fantasy is a huge thing. Gambling is becoming a big thing too. If you can be able to master those type of tracks, that's going to also set you forward too. You're looking at like not only ESPN, you mentioned Barstool, you mentioned there's other places too that are, and especially on your phone, that you can find other outlets or websites or whatever that are talking about gambling or talking about fantasy sports. I mean, fantasy sports is so huge, you can't really go anywhere around a major sport without seeing like a DraftKings or a FanDuel, perhaps, because a lot of those companies obviously invested or created relationships with the major four. So I think being able to find sort of some type of niche too, and again, trying to figure out ways to tell stories that are not reinventing the wheel, because again, at the end of the day, we're all trying to do different things. We're all trying to be innovative and, try to do things maybe our own way too. But if you read something, you watch something, you see something in person, try to think to yourself, if I was that producer, if I was that on-air person, or if I'm writing the story, what if I were to sprinkle it my way? What would I say? What would I do? And I think that would be something that I think would also tell, young students or people that might be wanting to make career changes and knowing that, hey, it's a tough field, but, we're fortunate here, Rob, too. I mean, the thing, too, is that, we're here in New England, and not only do you have a plethora of colleges, you have prep schools and high schools, too. Again, you've got the 4 professional sports teams as well, but you've got minor league teams from Maine down to Connecticut that definitely deserve coverage as well. And those are other areas where you get in, you network, you talk with people. And I would also say the other thing, too, that I definitely have learned, and I've told people as well, even if you want to be a content creator, even if you want to work in marketing, take an advantage of anything too. If ticketing is an opportunity, get involved with ticketing. If there's an opportunity to become part of the grounds crew, get involved with the grounds crew, because there are so many stories of people that started at the lower levels or wherever they were and have been able to work their way up too. And you can make obviously a diagonal move. And you know what? You might get into ticketing. You might get into food, or maybe you're having the fan experience or whatnot. And you might say to yourself, you know what? As much as I love doing content creation, I really like this particular lane, and I want to stay in this lane, because those are other areas too that I think we both know too, which is when you're walking into a venue, whether it's a professional game, minor league game, wherever, they're taking stats and things off your phone that you don't want to know about that we both know. And I think that's something that you got to think about too, which is they want to know about the fan experience. I walk into Gillette Stadium last night, and it's a total different experience that I have as a season ticket holder going into a game in 2019 than I experienced in 2002 or 2010. And that's, again, just looking around the marketplace and looking at, hey, what are our competitors or the people in our realm doing, and what can we do better to attract more of the customers?
It's wow, that was some great information. That was some great.
I'm not trying to steal your thunder, Rob.
No. This is all I'm teeing up for you. So, there's so many things to touch on about that one, but I want to ask you this. So, here's my point of view on, I'm going to go back to the kind of the hiring process. If I had a student who walked into, or a prospect walk into my office and ask them, and I start talking about their experience in their career, if they flipped open their laptop and they typed in their website and they showed me everything they did, because I'm already going to look at the Instagram, I'm already going to look at their social media. But if they show me the content and they show me a website, and if it's about dog sitting, but I know that they have the skill set to understand how to go out and get clients, how to create content, customer service. That is an example that I've used a lot with our students is, do you have a website? I know you have Instagram, you have social media, right? And if it's private, make it on private, right? Make it public, because you're hiding something, and they're going to not hire you because of it. It's a game changer. It's a game over. What do you think about that? Do you think the best strategy now is to create a website and to put your content and have it live on a website, or do you think the better place to start is probably within Instagram or one of those other platforms?
Well, it's an interesting question. I mean, I think the first thing any employer is going to look at exactly is that whether you're going in for the interview or if you're letting someone come into your office, is that you want to get to know as much as you can about them. The social media, the part is, I think, is essential, especially for growing a brand, growing your individual identity, being able to say, hey, Joe or Sally are very into dog sitting, or very into writing about, 1970s movies or everything too. And that's what they're kind of social there too. But I also think you got to be careful on social media. I mean, there's been so many stories written out there where someone comes in with a killer resume, and you find out that their social media presence may not be a presence that would be approved or appropriate for adding on to that type of thing. So it's kind of a double-edged sword where, again, it's good and bad in certain situations as well. When I look at, in that situation you present, someone coming in and saying exactly, I think in this day and age, I think everyone's got an online portfolio, whether it's one location, whether it's multiple channels, whether it's saying, hey, here's my blog, here's my Facebook page, here's my YouTube channel, whatnot too. That's great, because you want to be able to have that. I definitely think trying to maybe, cultivating, or putting together one area of like one page, whether it's like a Medium post where you just put up everything with your links, or, just building a simple Tumblr or some sort of simple like website where you can just be able to just put a lot of links up there, put your resume up there, have it be a one-stop shop. Those are always essential, I think, too. But I think when it comes to walking in, I think that exactly. I think you got to look for more than just, as you alluded to, not just the creating the content. Can you create the content? Great. That's fantastic. Can you not? Maybe you're okay with it. Okay, we can teach you that type of stuff too. But I think that the biggest thing is you got to look for the work ethic too. I think that there's people are going to walk around and say, hey, I grinded on that too. But I think if you look at kind of their track, kind of see where they went, kind of see what they did, exactly, building relationships, building partnerships, so essential in this day and age too. Those are attractive definitely to me as well. But I think that also you want to make sure that what they're producing is clean. What they're producing is going to reflect not only well on you as your employer, perhaps the business or the customer or the company that you're bringing them board to, but making sure that you're not bringing someone aboard that might obviously try to take risk. I mean, there are certain lines sometimes where companies might say, look, we don't want someone who's going to totally push the boundaries. We know there, as you and I could definitely brainstorm within a matter of seconds, there are certain websites, certain outlets that definitely push the boundaries very quickly. And then there's certain websites that want to play conservatively. So I think it's just trying to figure out that kind of ideal mold, or what your goals and your objectives and your problems that you got to solve. But I think at the end of the day, I definitely look for someone that's got an array of experience versus maybe someone that may not have. But I also look for someone with a work ethic too. I mean, I think you can be able to have a conversation with someone and you can figure out, is this someone that I can teach? Is this someone I can mentor? Is this someone I can help out? Because you could be a part of their story, and then 5-10 years from now, when they're on television and you say, hey, I remember when they were fetching me coffee or whatnot too, that brought that great work ethic, that's going to take them a long way too.
Okay, so you're not going to get off the hook about this one. I agree with you, what you just said.
Okay.
All right, so you're not going to get off the hook about this next one. So now that you guys have AB, right, and do you need them? Do you
I
need
don't
him?
know. The Antonio Brown situation is a little bit concerning to me because, I mean, right now, so let me step back, okay? I think the product of the NFL is not what it was 2010, 11, 12, 13. I want to say maybe even 2014. I think there are certain people, it's the old adage, as they say, Belichick's playing chess and the other coaches are playing checkers. Now, I think there's a certain number of teams in the league, the Rams, the Saints, the Eagles. I'll be biased also being a Cowboys fan because I do think that they're getting things kind of the Patriot mold here too. I think the Ravens of the past, I think the Steelers of the past, and I think the Chargers in some situations, and the Chiefs, it's not an equal playing field. And I think that right now, I think adding it to Antonio Brown is just, there's something in my mind that I say, why did he get himself out? Why was he asking people on social media for help to get out of Oakland, how to kind of get out of that situation? I mean, I really am concerned because I for his sake and for his health, because I really don't know what you're going to get out of him because, he's a guy that's been the de facto number one. And I think that right now he's coming into a team where, a de facto number one, yes, you've had Randy Mosses, you've had Chad Ochocinco's, you have Corey Dillon's, the Albert Hainsworth too. And some have worked out, some haven't. But sometimes they come in and they adopt. Adelius Thomas is a perfect example. 2009, there was a snowstorm unexpectedly. I think middle of the week or something. It was like a winter storm that came out of the blue, I think early, like mid-late fall. And he was late. And eventually they shipped him out of town, I think to the Jets maybe, or to the Ravens, back to the Ravens. But I don't think he was a needed acquisition, and I really do wonder. I mean, how does he work here, or is this the Randy Moss of 2010 where he plays a couple of games and they send him back to the Steelers or send him back to the Raiders?
There's one thing too. It's sometimes you get those players and he's not running around on the other side of the field on you either. You bring him back in, but here's another thing. And I can't remember the guy's name, but he was an old Barstool guy. He was a punter for the Colts for a long time. But he brought up a great theory. I think it was trending for a while. He gets into spring, he gets into ODAs, and he starts catching some passes from Carr, and he's like, it's not the same as old Big Ben, zipping it.
Right.
Carr's not at that level. And he's like, I don't know if we're going to be able to win here. So did he come up, him and his agent, come up with it? I don't know if they're smart enough to come up with some kind of scheme to do it, but I think the way they start digging yourself in a hole, bigger hole, and that it's not the same quarterback. How do we get to New England?
Right.
Obviously his agent's on the phone with the Patriots way before that even happened. That's why the tampering charges are coming out now, because you're not supposed to do that.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
So It's an easy thing to say, but all of these things happen. It's just the way pro sports works. But it just seems like, how the heck do the Patriots always fall into this? The perception of it is, Belichick can handle these guys, right? He set this culture of he doesn't, you don't like it, you're gone. You could do all those things when you have Tom Brady back there for the last 35 years. But it's just interesting. What do you think the consensus of the fans are sitting around when you guys, I'm sure you're all talking about it at the game last night, where people say, we don't need him, he's just going to be a problem?
Well, I want to just hit on one thing too, because so the Antonio Browns, it can be a case study at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Because I think the one thing that, you look at right now, the way that how athletes are, because we talk about social media and about how, he's very active on social, as we all know. He videotaped Coach Tomlin in the locker room after they beat Kansas City. I think it was like an ice game. There was some ice storm that day that pushed that game from, I think, a 1 to an 8 o'clock start. And that was the year when they came to play the Patriots before they went to play the Falcons in the Super Bowl. And I know people obviously criticized him for the immaturity right there as well. He uses social media again and try to work with fans or work with people that are social media influencers or people in marketing, saying, hey, how do I get myself out of here as well? And I think that it's a case where you can't do what you see him doing. I almost feel like, I think Antonio Brown is, again, like around my age or a little bit a year or two older. And the thing is that you can't watch what he does and think that, if I'm in a job, whether I'm in sales or marketing or something, and I don't like it that way, you can't go on your own personal social channel and start obviously chastising your boss or chastising.
That'll go over well, right? Yeah.
No, it's not exactly, because you're not going to be making,
right.
especially you're not going to be making the $15 million or the $30 million or the $50 million that he had guaranteed.
Yeah.
So or the contracts. But I think that, when it comes to him coming to the Patriots, I mean, the biggest question, again, I think for not only myself and other fans is, can he adopt the Patriot way? And we have seen here in New England, where there have been situations where, again, Moss worked out well for a couple of years. 2010, at the end of the Bengals game, he's standing up there. He has a longer press conference than expected. And that was kind of the beginning of the get rid of Randy Moss, right, situation too. You had players like Chad Ochocinco who really never panned out. I know Belichick was obsessed when he was on the Bengals, trying to get him to come play for them. And obviously he did, and it really wasn't he really didn't do much during that 2011 Super Bowl year for them that I can't really think of. Another example too, and again, I don't want to get too far down the rabbit hole with this one, is the Aaron Hernandez situation. And I want to give credit. People I know that the Globe did a great deep dive series. I'll promote obviously their story that they did. I think it was a 5 or 6, deep dive into Aaron Hernandez from birth, obviously, to his final day in prison. But that was another example right there where, Kraft said afterward, when obviously he was arrested, that, he was duped by him too. He gets this brand new contract. Hernandez says, I'm committed to being the New England Patriot way. And obviously he was doing things behind the Patriots' back that they didn't know about. And obviously there were things that he was doing also on stadium property or in the locker room or having possession of things that certainly should not have been there. So I think with Antonio Brown, I'm sure it's exciting to think this is like a video game team right here that you're building here, where you put it on like the easy mode of Madden and basically have every trade that you want accepted to your super team. Mm-hmm. But then you got to think about Demaryius Thomas and Philip Dorsett, and you think about Julian Edelman, and the crazy theory of, does Rob Gronkowski, who was in the stadium last night, does he want to come back and play? And so, there's a lot of parallels that you see at 2007. And I was listening to one of the Boston sports shows earlier today while finishing up work stuff. And, one of the things that I found that was fascinating is they said the level of the playing field, especially what we saw last night, might be a very bad playing field. So this might be their year where they actually do go 19-0. I don't know who stands in their way. I mean, I think Kansas City will be a challenge. I don't know if Kansas City's defense has what it takes to stand up to that offense, because the thing with the offense is, when they come to the line, you don't know who they're going to. They're putting Burkhead out on the wing. They're obviously moving around Sony Michel and James White. I know that obviously they lost, I think Marcus Cannon now possibly do a couple of games for injury. But at the end of the day, I think that, they are the Patriots, and, they are the best. You got to pinch yourself. I think you got to, whether you're a Patriot fan or not, you got to appreciate what we're watching here. I mean, you think back, Chuck Noll and Terry Bradshaw, that was always the greatest relationship. Lombardi and Starr. You think about Staubach and Tom Landry didn't always have the greatest relationship too. I mean, obviously Staubach retired probably a couple of years too early, or maybe, but again, he had also concussions and some issues too. Don Meredith, who also retired, I think people thought way too early after the late, the 60s as well, get into that ice bowl game against the Packers. So whether you're a Pats fan or not, this is something you got to appreciate and admire, because I don't know when you have a quarterback coach tandem like this down the road, because I don't know who's coming out of college right now or who's in the high school world. And, you look at the college world and it's the same situation. Sports Illustrated highlighted so many student athletes that wanted to go back, wanted to be starting roles. Jalen Hurst, and Tua obviously were kind of the two-headed monster down with Alabama. Hurst now is with Oklahoma and probably makes them now a title contender. And you lose Jake Fromm's initial starter that was ahead of him because he was injured. Fromm goes in, and then this guy goes back because he rewrote the entire record book for football, high school football out in Washington. So he's now at Washington. And so I don't know. It's such a weird kind of meme type of world, and I think that they just want to go where they're going to win at the end of the day.
100%. Yeah, 100%. Every pro athlete, if you're fortunate enough to hang in there, right? You want to win a championship, and why not? Everybody should want to play for the Patriots at some point.
At this point, why not?
Why not? But you're absolutely right. You live through. You're fortunate enough to live through a great time to grow up in Boston, when every team is, for the most part, every pro team in that market is relevant. And
exactly.
It wasn't like that for your father or your grandfather, right? And
no,
so I mean, it's just, I happened to be a free agent with the Patriots in 1989 in the old stadium. And I just remember, there was the old turf was like cement,
Yep.
and they put us up in some old motel where you walk outside and your car's parked right there. That was, 1989. And it was like, well, of all the teams, and it was it was the old, I think the Sullivan family that owned it. And,
right. Yep.
It just was a different place. So,
Totally.
I look at it, especially with pro sports, because I was a general manager in the Arena Football League, and even though the zero is a little bit less, it's still the same thing. It's still pro sports. You're still paying guys, and it all of it starts with the ownership group. All of it. It all trickles down. Agreed. It always does. You don't know the behind the scenes that happens. You don't know the conversations that happen. And what Robert Kraft was able to figure out is how to differentiate the business that he created with corrugated and kind of transfer it over to how he treated people, when I then went back to work for the NFL for a long time. And I volunteered for the new NFL youth development program, which is called, at that time it was Play Football, and now they call it Play 60. But back then they wanted kids to actually put a football in their hand. And it was the NFL Flag League. And out of all the teams in the league, this was 1997, or 1994, I'm sorry, it was 1994. It was the Patriots who were the team in the league that held the pilot program. And it was in the new stadium, and it was, Kraft and his family that kind of led that whole. I remember his son, Jonathan Kraft, called me up whenever he knew, because it's a long story there, but when he was still, now he's famous, but back then he wasn't. And we launched the program with the Patriots, and it starts with him, without a doubt, it starts and ends with him. And, obviously you bring in Belichick, and, if not Drew Brees, but,
Bledsoe, so you brought in.
Bledsoe doesn't get.
Well, Bledsoe was there with Parcells.
That's right.
If you look at the 2001 team, as we both know, those were a lot of Parcells leftovers. I mean, Belichick, as we both know, was also part of that. He was a coordinator on that staff. Goes to the Jets. We don't need to rehash the entire Jets-Patriots saga with the draft picks and whatnot, too. But the 2001 team, if you think about that, I mean, I was in 8th grade, so that's when, from my end, that's when they really started clicking and winning was around here. That was a lucky team. But it was the thing that and it was a debate I think that I had with some people on like Twitter earlier this summer, which was, if you think about what were some of the best, I think I ranked maybe, and I think I got called out for it. But when you're ranking like your top 10 Super Bowl teams, the 01 team was probably hands down one of the luckiest teams that they won. That was hands down an example of great coaching. And again, you have Rex. It was the defensive coach. Charlie Weiss was the offensive coordinator too. You got a no-name quarterback that's in the second year was obviously a late pick, of course. And I think that in my mind it set obviously the tone for things to come. But the 2001 team. And the 2002 team the 2002 team had that Super Bowl hangover there too. I mean, they had that exciting game where they have to beat the Dolphins, I believe, in overtime, and then they need Brett Favre, which I think by the time it already, it hit the Packers, I think it already clinched the playoffs. They need to go into the Meadowlands and beat Chad Pennington and the Jets, and they don't do that. So the Patriots fans are distraught. And then you see the 2003 season, and the 2003 season was so fascinating because if you think about it, they were losing people like from the get-go. I mean, they were losing injuries, and they were bringing in guys like, I forget the name of the former running back for the BC, but my father was in a gym in Wellesley, and there he was, Mike, I'm drawing a blank on his last name, was working out on like an elliptical or treadmill like 2-3 rows over from him. So they're bringing these guys in right off the street, and they're still proving that they were able to do it. And they had that long winning streak that started right after the loss of the Redskins, and it continued into 2004. And I think the 2004 team, hands down, was one of the best teams. But if you want to talk about what they did, I mean, in my mind, the best Super Bowl team, and if it was not 04 or not 03, would have to be 2014. That was hands down. Browner and Darrelle Revis. And you got obviously these guys on offense here too. That was hands down the best team. The 2016 team that won that Super Bowl against the Falcons, that was a lucky break because we clearly learned right there Kyle Shanahan was not fully ready to be a head coach. He had everything in his arsenal. He had everything he needed. They just have to run the ball. That's what they have to do, too. They get too fancy in the situation right there. And see, that's another problem where I think that when you see the Belichick and the Patriots and the Brady's, is that what team, other than maybe the Ravens and the Steelers, but again, maybe not the Ravens and Steelers of current years, but of past years, were the only ones that could stand up to them and say, I don't care that you're Belichick and Brady. We can do that. Harbaugh's best years of 2008 to 2012 when they won the Super Bowl, those teams would come in here and would not be afraid of facing the Patriots. The team they have now, it's a shell of what they were back in the day.
Well, now you have Antonio Brown, so God bless you and good luck.
Well, we'll see. Like I said, I don't know. I mean, I think that he's going to last, and they have that. Schefter comes out today earlier with the potential of a second year with the option. And Brady's housing him at the moment. So, maybe Brady's going over something and saying, I need you because there's no guarantee that I'm here next year. And maybe I do end my career by playing for my favorite team growing up with the 49ers. Or just Sean McVay says, you know what? Jared Goff's contract should be dumped off to the Cardinals or something, and let's take you out and we'll pay you for 3 more years.
Here's the bottom line. Belichick knows how hard it is to win in the NFL, right?
Oh, yeah.
And nothing's guaranteed. It's probably at the greatest. I mean, obviously, they've been able to win those close games more than anybody else in the last 10 years. It's not. It's the level is very much the same. It's the ownership groups and the coaches. And if you get lucky with a quarterback, they can stay healthy. But there's no one's going to be on the Patriots roster like Antonio Brown that could score like that. And Brady knows it, Belichick knows it, everybody knows it. So,
we'll see.
Right? But the question is, could you still win without him? Yes.
Yes, totally.
Without a doubt.
There's no reason at this point right now. Trade him for a 6th-round draft pick to the Carolina Panthers at some point too. They've got enough talent out there.
You've been around long enough. It's a long season. You see how it plays out. You lose Thomas, you lose one of those guys, and you'll be wishing you had him. So just
I don't know.
Who knows? Who knows? If he was a cancer in the locker room, I could see it. But if he's not, who knows? Maybe they have a helmet that could fit him too. Matt, I tell you what.
Next question.
We could definitely spend all night, and I could see the passion and how talented you are, and know that it probably started, and you probably have a family that just loves it too, and you're a super talented guy, man, and I have nothing but respect for you for following your passion and being able to figure out how to make a living doing it. And you obviously are a super smart guy that has an encyclopedia. It's just a vault. It's the vortex right here that locked you in. But man, this has been a pleasure. I mean, we're gonna have to do this again, and maybe when Antonio Brown gets up there and he's leading the league in touchdowns, and we're just killing it on DraftKings, making a lot of money off them. But I appreciate your time, man.
Hey, this is a lot of fun, man. I really appreciate it. And, hey, anytime you want to dissect Belichick's early years and discuss whether the 01 or 03 or 04 team is better than the current team with Antonio Brown, let me know anytime.
Well, I got some stories for you because I have some friends that coached during those times there. So there's some interesting facts that you probably can figure them out anyways. But listen, it was great. Let's try to loop back. I'll have you on. Maybe mid-season, and we'll kind of continue this conversation, and I'll be able to pull up some of the recordings of Fashion Antonio. So,
hey, if I could be the next Tony Maserati, I'm doing something right?
All right, brother. Hey, listen, this is Matt, on behalf of Matt Noonan over there. I got to point opposite. Rob Thompson over here. Thank you, everybody. Matt, thank you so much, and we'll catch you next time.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Rob. Appreciate the time.
All right, brother.